Looks like we're live. Okay. It's so wonderful to see everyone. It's been almost, I don't know, 8, 9 months, I think, since we last met. I hope everyone is doing well and has been well throughout this crazy time we're living in. So without further ado, I know time is precious and it's evening. We can go ahead and start the meeting of the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee on Tuesday, October 20th at 7 p.m. Well, it's 7:04 p.m. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. So the recommendation is that the Parks, Trails, and Greenways Advisory Committee approve the agenda and late items, if any, for the meeting today. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda? I see Phil and anyone else? Terry, all in favor? Great. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes. The minutes of March 10th. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at the minutes. They were linked to the agenda. And the recommendation is that the minutes of the parks. Oh, I'm sorry. I have a guest. Sorry about that. So the recommendation is that the minutes of the Parks, Trails, Greenways Advisory Committee meeting held March 10 be adopted. Are there any questions on the minutes, or is there anything that would like to be amended at this time? I don't see anything. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve? Thank you. All in favor? Can I see it too? I'm sorry, my husband has seemed to have forgotten I have a meeting tonight. Wonderful. Great. Can I move on, Steph?
I have a question.
Yes.
Steph, because we haven't had these meetings for so long, I've forgotten. Am I allowed to vote, or am I a liaison, Steph?
You're
on mute.
You're voting. You're a voter.
Thank you.
Yeah. Carla and I are not. We are staff.
Okay.
Carla and I are not voting members on this committee, but you are, Sue Ellen. Yeah.
Thanks. I had the same question.
Okay, good for me to know. All right, moving on to the next section. Public comments. I don't believe we have any member of the public present. And I don't think we received any comments via email. Okay, so we'll move on to the next for council referral. The item is going to be introduced by Emma Chow, I believe. Is that right? Yes. I don't know how much introduction I should give at this point, or I can hand over to Emma to brief the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm just going to do a share screen. Hopefully I can. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. This will be very similar to the presentation that was attached to the agenda. This is a development variance permit application that was received by the municipality in the summer, and it is for a property that is located on the west coast of the island, just south of Tunstall Bay Beach, as shown here. The lot is completely undeveloped right now and mostly covered by second growth forest and fairly steep slopes. The applicant is looking to, sorry, these are the steep slopes. The applicant is looking to build a house, a fairly large one, about 500 square meters in footprint, within the sea setback. So the land use bylaw has a 30-meter sea setback for this lot, and they are looking to, sorry, these are site photos. I'm just going to go to the main details of this application as it pertains to the committee and comments from the committee. So this is the house, about 500 square meters in footprint, and it is located within this 30-meter sea setback. Applicant is looking to reduce that 30 meters to 17.5 to facilitate the proposed development. The reasons for this request, this variance request, is to build closer to the water for safe, convenient water access. They are also citing limited building sites on this lot due to, all the steep slopes on this property. And they are also putting forward the argument that building at the bottom of the lot near the water will minimize disturbance to neighbors on the top of the lot, which is Whitesails Drive, and has quite a few properties. I believe there's 3 houses there that are adjacent to this site. As far as buildable areas, I just want to point out that there are 2 buildable areas on this site that are outside of setbacks and would not require a variance. This is a photo architectural rendering of the proposed house as seen from the water. This is the northeast side of the house. And from the proposed building site, this is a view of Tunstall Bay Beach. So you can see that it is quite close to the beach, and it is completely visible from the beach, which is one of the most popular beaches on Bowen Island. Currently, it is a very natural setting, completely treed, and the owner does have the right to develop this lot, including tree removal. So as part of the application and as considered as compensation for potential environmental impacts to reducing that sea setback, the applicant is proposing a covenant on this property to protect almost 50% of the lot from development. So the area that will be protected is shown in red here, and it will not be, it will be protected from development, including tree removal. So essentially left in its natural state. At the last council meeting, staff brought this application to council with the recommendation to consider the application and move forward with public comment. And that is because in staff's opinion, the covenant, the value of the covenant was commensurate with the potential environmental impacts from the variance request. It was raised at the meeting that it would be useful for council's consideration to receive further feedback from the Parks, Trails and Greenways Advisory Committee as far as the value of this covenant in terms of its benefit to the community for the enjoyment of Tunstall Bay Beach. So with that in mind, I've put together several guiding questions, which the committee can answer, or if you have any other relevant comment for this application, I would be glad to hear them. So I am looking to see if the committee finds this covenant consistent with the objectives and values of the parks plan, as well as your feelings on its value in terms of protecting the community enjoyment of Tunstall Bay Beach. And do you find that value is commensurate with the variance being requested and the impacts of that variance, and any other comments that you feel are relevant? So I'm going to stop share screen at this point. Hopefully you remember those questions. It's also in the covering letter, and open to discussion and comment.
Thank you, Emma, for the presentation. I'm not sure if everyone got a chance to remember those questions. I could also share my screen. I think I have them. Would that be good to do that? Would that be helpful? And as I do that, I think we can start taking comments. The first question was around the park plan and whether the variance application is consistent with the park plan. I don't know if someone would like to comment from the committee on that as I get the screen up.
Claudia here. Can I be on the speakers list, please?
Yes, Claudia.
Yeah. So I don't know the details around a shoreline conservation in the parks plan. Maybe Sue Ellen knows that better, or someone else on the committee. but I would think it's not in the mandate and of the, not the mandate, but I don't think it shares values with the objective of the parks plan to allow a variance of this sort that's, you know, half the seaside restricted area from development. So that 30 meters is meant to protect the shoreline, and you know, there's lots of reasons for that. That's undisturbed shoreline is rare in our region. It's getting rarer with development up and down Howe Sound and the Sunshine Coast. And I'm not sure, I think because they want a variance, they'd have to have an environmental assessment done. Is that right, Emily? Emma, sorry.
Yeah, there has been an environmental assessment done as part of this application.
Okay, and what were sorry, was it attached? I didn't see it, but what was the outcome from
Yeah,
that?
I'm not sure if it was attached in this agenda, but essentially they did note sedimentation and erosion control concerns around the existing clearing that has already taken place. And at this point, I just want to reiterate that Bowen Island doesn't have a site alteration or tree removal bylaw. So the property owner does have a right to clear and remove trees and vegetation on the site if it is not in a development permit area. And the majority of this lot, including all the shoreline that was shown, is not in a development permit area. So even though they are not allowed to build a structure or a building within the 30-meter setback, they can still clear the land, which is what they have done for the proposed building site. And the environmental assessment has pointed out that there will, if they were to build on that site, they will need to take mitigation measures to ensure that the sedimentation and erosion from the site does not have environmental impacts.
And did you say that they have already cleared the building site?
Yes.
I think, but I'm happy to continue with the discussion tonight, but I think we would need to review the environmental assessment before making final conclusions, given what we're supposed to be advising the council on. So I've got some other comments, but I'll pass it on to whoever else wants to take the floor now.
Thank you, Claudia. Phil?
I had similar comments and concerns, I guess, to Claudia's, that, you know, we're being asked here to comment on the covenant, but we haven't really had the opportunity to look at the actual variance and what it means. The covenant is being required because of the environmental assessment that was done, but we don't know what the terms of that assessment were. And so that makes it difficult to evaluate the third bullet point there in particular. Does the value of the covenant seem commensurate with the variance requested and its impact on the enjoyment and surrounding natural amenity? So I agree with Claudia that we probably need a bit more information to be able to really comment in detail. I guess I wonder also about the precedent that's set here in terms of allowing development closer to the shoreline. I think we all know that this has impacts beyond just aesthetic impacts, which will affect recreational uses in this area, but also in terms of you know, habitat values associated with the shoreline by having infrastructure in that close of proximity to the coastline. So I guess I would say that you know, the covenant itself of protecting adjacent land, I think is a worthy consideration. And, you know, I think the idea of leaving material protected from development on either side of the house along those shorelines adjacent would be a valuable thing to do in its own right. Whether it's equivalent or adequate in this case to offset the development itself, I think is still open to some question.
Thank you, Phil.
So can I just respond to the two previous comments there
Yeah.
from Claudia and Phil? Regarding the environmental assessment, the only concern that was raised was the sedimentation and erosion controls, and that will be a condition of the variance permit if issued.
I'd like to be on the speakers list again, if possible.
Yes.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, do we know if, yes, it's second growth forest, but most of the forest there would be at risk ecological communities as designated by the Conservation Data Center of BC. So they would be red or blue listed. So I don't know if the environmental assessment addressed that at all. I do know I have some experience doing an environmental assessment for exactly the same reason out at Eagle Cliff. A property owner wanted to reduce the setback to 17 meters, quite similar. And I did the environmental assessment, gave it first to the client. They didn't like, I wasn't saying they couldn't do it, but there were certain things about not removing trees over 30 centimeters outside the footprint, things like that. They didn't like what I wrote. And so they paid me for what I'd done. They told me not to show my assessment to anyone. And they hired another biologist to do a report that they liked better. So I think we really need to look closely at what this, the report that has been done on this property looked at, and whether it's comprehensive in listing the threats to the property. I think we tend to be afraid also to talk about the aesthetic values, but I think that it is up to us to bring that to light, that right now Tunstall Bay is a part of its beauty is that undeveloped shoreline for the most part to the left as you look out at the ocean there. So it definitely would be less appealing scenic wise, and we've addressed other properties where the scenic values are taken into account, and also our park plan does bring up aesthetics of scenery and coastlines. I don't know if that assessment even looked at the right time of the year for at-risk plant species, but that's something that also should be considered when doing this kind of evaluation. And I thought of something else and I can't remember now. So on to the next person.
Yeah, I would like to have a word when it's time.
Sure. I saw Bonnie's hand up a while ago.
And Lou, can I ask that? I mean, can you just keep those questions handy? It'd be really nice to see everybody. And with your sharing screen, everybody's on the on the side.
I can put the questions in the chat.
Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Well, I'll just stop my share. Sorry about
Thank you. No, it's just we're all learning what works and what doesn't. But it would be nice
to see everyone's faces, of course.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
So I just wanted to say something. I mean, I have commented as staff on this proposal already, but I just noticed something in that photo, and Claudia alluded to this earlier, is that it looks like that's a coastal bluff system, which it just had the beautiful lichen on it. Just that one photo, I hadn't noticed that before. So that was protected, at Cape Roger Curtis, that coastal bluff sensitive ecosystem is very valuable, and it's a very small, it doesn't have wide range, there's very small amounts of it left on Bowen Island. So I don't know. I haven't looked at that. That's something I didn't look at in the review. So I just wanted to say that I noticed that in that photo tonight for the first time, because I have not been on site. The other thing I wanted to mention was, or I wanted a question for Emma. I know the answer, but I just want to ask it as a question. So the property owner now could potentially apply for a dock application. Is that correct? There's nothing stopping, from a planning perspective, a dock application being applied for.
No. There's nothing stopping
Yeah.
the owner.
So that's what I just see happening here. So that, I mean, I don't know that, I'm speculating there, but that would stand to reason you've got a house closer to the water, then you can apply for a dock. And these were the issues that were brought up by the community, and there was a lot of angst to the community for Cape Project Curtis. So this is it's a very adjacent coastline area to Cape Project Curtis. So I just want to put it out there. There is a beautiful little beach there. I wouldn't doubt that it could be prime surf smelt and sand lance. It hasn't been identified, but it's a beautiful little sandy, relatively sandy pocket beach. It has the substrate size for conducive to. And as those, we know that surf smelts are not loyal to their spots. They will, where the habitat exists, they will spawn. And so as these areas become more impacted by docks and shoreline development, these little pocket beaches are going to become more and more ecologically valuable. So that's what is on that coastline there. I know that there is a riparian zone. There's a RAR applicable zone around that creek. But the thing is, we all know that detailed assessments can be done. And especially when there's clearing already happened on that property, then yeah, the zone of influences and such, or zone of sensitivities within the riparian areas assessments can be smaller, and it's really hard to do a riparian area once there's been a site that's been disturbed. So all these things can go into it. So just want to bring up, like in the past, these aesthetics have been extremely important for our community. And as Claudia mentioned, that, from Tunstall, it is very visible. And there is a likelihood that there will be a dock there.
Mm-hmm.
DG Blair and then Emma, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks. I guess I have some very significant concerns around this application. And especially, well, I don't know which is higher priority, but certainly precedent. There's a reason why we have that 30-meter setback, and to bring it down to 17 meters just seems like, how could you then stop the next, there's 3 lots in that general area, I think, slated for development. How are we going to then say their neighbors can't go to 17 meters? So I think it's setting an extremely, extremely dangerous precedent. And then when I look at, in terms of our mandate from the Greenways perspective, or, the park plan and Greenways, that is, that area there is a very high value greenway from people enjoying Bowen Island from the beach. So the idea that there's going to be a very large house right on the edge of that property, I think is contrary to the intent of the parks plan. So those are my 2 main points. And then the other, actually maybe the third main point, is I totally agree with what Claudia and Phyllis have to say, is that we haven't seen the terms of reference of what was that environmental consultant or whoever it was who did the environmental assessment, what were they asked to do? Because that's something that makes a big difference in terms of what that report is going to look like. And then again, we have not seen the results of that report, so we cannot comment on whether or not it adequately addressed the concerns of the site. In terms of only buildable sites, it seems like there's all sorts of points coming out. They say there's only 2 buildable sites, but I've seen lots of sites on Bowen Island, and I think of Eagle Cliff, that are when I first moved to Bowen, nobody thought they'd ever build there because they were so steep and they were, not not seen as buildable. And there's lots of houses on sites. So the technology exists. So I really don't buy there's only 2 buildable sites on that lot. There's probably that site that they picked is probably the one that gives them the best view. And I get that. But the thing is that 30-meter setback has been around before they purchased the lot. So I guess it all adds up to me that this is a really significant ask, and I don't think I'll go as far as to say I would really doubt that it would be worthwhile to in the long term to set that precedent of allowing them to build that close to the sea.
Thank you, DG. Emma?
Thanks. I just want to respond to some of those comments. I'll start with Bonny's. Regarding the dock application, yes, the homeowner can apply for a dock application. It is in a water zone that would allow for a dock if it met all the regulations. And this is regardless if there is a house within the sea setback or not. So if they decide to build outside of the setback, they can still apply for a dock. And if they meet all the regulations, we would have to approve it. It is not a discretionary approval for the dock. Just to make that clear, regardless of this variance, they may build a dock if they meet all the regulations. Talking about the forage fish habitat at the mouth of the creek, you're correct, Bonny. It is that vicinity is protected by a development permit area and will require further environmental assessment for any type of development in that area. That being said, the remainder of the shoreline is not in a development permit area. So I don't know if everyone is familiar with the pocket beach that Bonny is talking about, or should I put up a map? Nods, nods, no nods.
A map would be useful.
Okay. This is the creek in question, Burke Creek. And at the mouth of the creek in this area is a sandy pocket beach that seems to be good forage fish habitat. And as mentioned, within 30 meters of the top of bank on both sides of that creek, it would be a development permit area. But outside of that, the remainder of the shoreline, including the area that Bonny had noted, the lichen that is seems to be endangered on Bowen, is not protected. It's not in development permit area. And as I mentioned during the presentation, the remainder of this shoreline, pretty much everything that was included in the covenant, which was negotiated with staff, that area is not under any sort of protection. So other than the 30-meter building setback, where they cannot construct a building, they can do anything else they want, which includes clearing and disturbance of the lichen, removal of the lichen. So any of that type of activity is fair game without a protective covenant. And that was the reason why staff negotiated a protective covenant, because of the value, the aesthetic value of this shoreline and the environmental value of this shoreline as it pertains to the community, parks, trails, and recreation and environmental concerns and all of that. The protective covenant would protect the remainder of this shoreline from any further disturbance. Whereas right now, you cannot build a house within the 30 meters, but you can remove, disturb tree and vegetation, just to make that very clear. And then I wanted to speak to the dangerous precedents, which is also definitely a concern. The land use bylaw does allow for a reduction in the sea setback based on the average of your adjacent neighbors. So that does not mean that the adjacent neighbors automatically get the 17.5 meter sea setback. It would be an average of that and their other neighbor. And right now, These two lots, I can tell you, the one to the south is protected by an archaeological covenant from development. There is midden on this site, so there will be no development within that 30 meters regardless. They will not benefit at all from the reduction in sea setback on this site. The lot to the north is a common property of a fairly large strata of all the properties along Whitesails. And it is also highly unlikely that it would be developed in the future. But also you can see there is a lot of steep slopes on this lot. Even if it were, it would require all of the strata owners to come to agreement on development of this lot. And it is a very challenging lot to build on within the sea setback. So that being said, 17.5 meter sea setback would have fairly minimal impact on the sea setback in the area. This community lot, this common property, is adjacent to another lot where their sea setback is greater than 30 meters. So then your average between 17.5 and 30, even if they were to develop this lot, which is highly unlikely, would still be at about 23 meters. So just to give some perspective on those concerns, I would also really like to hear comments on the actual value of the covenant as it pertains to park trails and greenways. I wasn't aware that this committee focused on the environmental impacts as much, or else I would have made sure that the environmental assessment was shared. I'll admit that the assessment was quite brief. I believe it was like 3 pages. And it was to look at the potential environmental impacts in general of the proposed development, particularly as it pertained to the reduction in sea setback and how it might affect that area within the sea setback. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Emma. I think I saw Claudia's, sorry, not Claudia, Carla. Did you have your hand up? And after Carla, Sue Ellen.
Hi. So I also wanted to echo what Claudia and everyone was saying about the environmental assessment, just in hoping that there's some sort of mitigation measures for the protection of the Rocky Bluff ecosystem and maybe for trees as well. I thought that it was interesting that in the artist rendition that showed a bunch of trees in front of the house, and I was wondering if that was a real thing or that was just, you know, in the picture. So I think that would be really great. But the other thing that I was going to suggest, because I do understand that this might happen whether or not we want it to, is could the covenant include maybe a protection for the entire coastline, but a small portion of it, and maybe the portion in front of their house just have no hardening of the shore or further hardening of the shore for a small part of it? Or no dock, or like, can the covenant include something like that?
It's a negotiation at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely asked for that section of the shoreline to be included, the entire shoreline. And the applicant is very firm that they do not want to include it. At the same time, they are saying that they absolutely do not intend to remove all the trees, but they will not include that area in the covenant. So the architectural rendering with the trees in front is apparently their intention. But when I asked for them to include it in the covenant, they refuse. So they do plan to do some selective clearing for views and water access, but they intend to keep most of the trees there.
Okay. Well, you know, if it could be negotiated that, and I don't really know if the protective covenants work like that, where you can say, you can do certain things, but you can't do other things. I think that protecting the shoreline from hardening and from structures below the high tide line and, just within a few meters, that would be important, and not a structure as we define it, but like any structure in terms of, retaining walls and that kind of thing.
I haven't broached the subject of shoreline hardening, so I could see how, if they're willing to do that. Definitely docks, though, that is their intention, so they will not be excluding that.
They are intending, okay.
Mhm.
Okay, Sue Ellen, you're on mute.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, and hello, everybody. I'm remembering our discussions several years ago on Tunstall Bay, where we made a long list of all the uses of Tunstall Bay Beach. And so far, the discussion that we've been having focuses on aesthetics and scenic views from the beach. But I'm also interested in swimmers, and where would swimmers go, and would their activity be impacted by a building closer to the water? Would it feel like the building was looming over them, or that they were swimming into a private space? Would it impact or limit the use of boats? And I suggest this one because it's a kayaking spot from Tunstall Bay, and the municipality and this committee has been part of setting up the boat rack there and arranging for people to, the community uses that beach an awful lot in many ways. They use it at night. So what would the impact of lights from a home shining out, or from a dock, that kind of thing, but from the home, which is what under discussion here, that is closer to the shoreline, would that impact on community use of the beach at night? It's a social gathering place, right? People sit, visit. And I'm wondering about, there's a couple of businesses that operate from there. There's a couple of children's camps, and wildlife watching is another aspect of one of the activities that takes place there. So I'm just wondering if the committee could have all these kinds of uses in mind, including the Tunstall Bay community, what's it called? Association, the clubhouse down there, and so basically the neighborhood that has invested in the clubhouse and also uses the beach, Learn to Sail Club, all those groups. So besides just the scenic view, I think there's a lot of activities that could be limited, and I'm wondering about the committee's ideas about that, including the use of the shoreline, the public shoreline, at the little sandy beach that has been described, not just Tunstall Bay, which is the public beach maintained by the municipality, but all the shoreline below the high tide line is public currently. And would that, the use of that by kayakers, say, paddling along the shore, would that, or landing at that little sandy beach when it's a lower tide, would that be limited by allowing this variance? And then lastly, I have a question for Bonny. Bonny, conservation covenants and their effectiveness and how the municipality funds them, how effective have conservation covenants been at protecting the shoreline on Bowen? And how are they monitored and how are they funded? As in, does the municipality fund their monitoring and enforcement, or has this applicant offered to put aside some to fund that? But partly the effectiveness.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Well, it's something that we don't routinely do, is monitoring of covenants. I mean, there are some covenants monitored on an annual basis, and those are the Islands Trust covenants on Bowen, which is fantastic. You know, and covenants are a funny business because, yeah, if you don't consistently monitor, and you know, it's hard to enforce they're a different ball of wax, of course, than a bylaw. So I think there's varying degrees of how well conservation covenants have held up over time on Bowen. I think sometimes people forget they're there, property changes hands, they're not well delineated. There's blowdown, there's also danger trees, there's lots of things that happen, natural processes and not so natural processes. And there's, so it's a tough one, because we don't monitor currently. Mm-hmm.
DG?
Sorry. Just a question maybe for Claudia. In terms of, you mentioned the, I think, blue listed ecosystem with the, or maybe it was Bonny, with the coastal bluff. And I think my understanding with from a provincial point of view, threatened ecosystems like that do have some level of protection. Can you comment on that?
I can comment. There is no legal binding protection for them, but it is up to municipalities and regional districts to be aware of their environmental resources and sensitive areas. And exactly for this reason, when development proposals come up, that they know what they have and what needs protection. But there is no legal binding. It's not like really only the SARA listed species, the Species at Risk Act for endangered species of mammals and plants and so on have legal protection, but even then it's not on private property. So it's more in the hands of planners and municipalities.
Right. Great, thank you.
I would like to add one thing, if I may. My sense of this request for a variance is that there's enough reasons, even from a recreation point of view and an aesthetic point of view, to deny this request, and let alone from an environmental point of view. But combined, it seems like it shouldn't go ahead. Yes, there wouldn't be a covenant then on the remainder of the shoreline, but presumably they don't want to cut down every tree on their shoreline for the sake of cutting down trees. And if we are going to have to accept that they, if they apply for a dock and there's no legal reason to deny the application, then we're already going to have a dock there. So are we going to also allow a variance to have a house almost right at the shoreline?
I have Jeremy and then Carla.
Yeah, I just, my 2 cents worth, my first impression of that was imagining that the covenanted area, well, as Emma says, could potentially, without covenant, be logged. Although, as Claudia points out, why would they do that? But it is a point of exposure, which is, what's the word, disturbing, potentially. I'm quite familiar with that beach. I used to land my kayak there a lot, or walk there. And there are a lot of shorebirds in that area. I think they take advantage of the fact that there's the Burke Creek emptying out there. There are also a lot of black widow spiders, which I can attest to. But even if the house was set back, I think that just the very presence of it would be a deterrent for people landing there, even though they have a right to do so within the high tide line. I agree the general aesthetic is always going to be diminished by the proximity of a house to the water. And of course, the closer it is to the water, the more so that would be the case. I really can't speak to the environmental sensitivities of the area apart from the idea of the proposed covenanted area being potentially exposed to being logged or otherwise, who knows what, another house, subdivision of the land subsequently without a covenant. That's just a concern.
Carla?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on I think what Claudia was saying about they probably wouldn't cut down the trees necessarily, but just one thought was that if they were having to site their house really far back, that they might end up just clearing a whole huge area in front of their house so that they keep that ocean view open for themselves. It could be a clear path to the water. So the potential for that as well is all I'm saying.
Ben?
Hi, everyone. I'm having a really hard time seeing the value of the covenant in terms of parks and public use. It seems to me like what the homeowners are asking is a huge thing, and what they are offering is an insignificant thing. It's not going to provide access for Bowen Islanders to their property in any way, and it's going to interrupt an existing area that people enjoy. So my sense is that it's not, there's not a whole lot of value in the covenant that they're proposing.
Are there any more comments from the committee? So it seems that the recommendation here, I mean, there are a few things we've heard. There's one end where we don't really see the benefit from and the value from proceeding with this variance application as a committee, but there has been the request to see the environmental assessment and the terms of reference for that assessment. I think there are a number of questions regarding the points that came up, including the forage fish that are present, the coastal bluff ecosystem, I think just all in knowing what the environmental needs are and what has been included in the terms for the assessment. So I don't know, Steph, I think we would, before proceeding, we'd need to see the environmental assessment as a committee to be able
Emma, what's your timing like then? Do you need something from today or could you wait for another meeting?
The consideration date is set for November 9th, so there is a bit of time. Staff report needs to be submitted by October 30th. So is this something that can be circulated by email?
I believe so, but would it require another discussion amongst the committee, or would
we could do a quick, if members are amenable to doing a quick one topic?
It seems that it might be, I mean, time is precious, but the issue seems so important and critical for maybe another round of discussions to see how we'd like to proceed with our recommendation.
I would agree. I think if we could get a hold of the terms of reference for the report and then the report, that would be really useful. And then we could convene a one topic meeting, because I do think I don't think we can deal with this in terms of coming forward with a recommendation just by email. I think we would need to discuss it.
I can set that up.
And Claudia?
I'm wondering what the procedure is at the Muni with this kind of thing. Like I understand the staff have already been in negotiation regarding the covenant. And so I'm wondering, if in future we could also, this could be passed to our committee for a look before we get so far that that there's such a tight time crunch.
Steph, is that something you could address?
You know that I think development variance permits don't generally go to committee. This was a special request.
Okay, Sue Ellen?
I just wanted to, transparency here, it was me who requested that it come to this committee because I would welcome the input from the committee. And Emma, I didn't, I didn't send it to the other committee, or I didn't make a motion to suggest to council that they send it to the Environment and Climate Action Committee. But there is still overlap between those two committees, isn't there? And we have expertise here. And the Parks, Trails and Greenways function includes a lot of these environmental aspects. The official community plan and the Parks plan direct the community to protect some of the special features and in the ecosystems on the island. So that's just what I wanted to say. It was my idea to send it here. And so I value the input of the committee. But it was a council vote. Council voted to support that, sending it to this.
Yeah, thanks.
Bonny?
Thanks, Sue Ellen. I just wanted to say, I remember the visioning exercise for the Parks Plan, and there were a lot of members here that are here in the committee were at that session, and just the amount of times that aesthetics and intangible qualities came up with all the community members. It is something I think we really value as Bowen Islanders. And also too, with the lights, I just want to bring this up because we don't really know the effects of lighting on a lot of species. We know the effects on some species. So that was a really good point that was brought up today, is the lighting aspect.
And Terry?
I'm just curious, if just from my take is that most people, it sounds, are maybe veering on the side of voting against this variance. And is there a chance we can just vote tonight? Do we need to get the environmental assessment going, or is that really going to make or break it?
Good point.
Yes, DG, and then Sue Ellen?
Yeah, good point. I don't think it would, depending on what it says, but from what Emma's indicated in terms of the depth of the report, we'll probably find that we would need, a more robust report to do it. But I think what I would like to see the report, the terms of reference in the report, because I think it'll give a stronger recommendation to council based on the information or the lack of information that is in that report. And so we wouldn't be able to say that unless we've actually seen that report. So that would be my reasoning. I would doubt that, you're right. I would doubt that it would change my mind, but I think we'll have a better recommendation if we're able to see it first.
And Sue Ellen, thank you.
Yeah.
And Emma after.
Thank you. I'm just one member of council, and council are elected by all kinds of everybody in the community, and we come from all kinds of different perspectives. So being able to explain a recommendation is probably a good idea. And I wanted to touch on Emma's point that Bowen's shorelines are not protected by a development permit area or any other shoreline protection. We could become more and more hardened shoreline over time. And perhaps at some point, Chair, you might consider whether the committee has an appetite to make any recommendations to council about whether a development permit area is needed, or what might be involved in that, or what values might be there. Maybe it would just be a recommendation to the a talk with staff. I don't know, but I think something to think about.
Mhm.
I think DG had her hand up.
Yeah, I think somebody else was somebody else ahead of me.
With Emma, and then
Yeah, I was actually just curious. So is the plan to schedule an other committee meeting next week?
yeah, as soon as possible. As soon as we have the terms and some time to review, of course.
That can be, yeah, that can be sent out tonight. Just wanted everyone aware of the timeline. If you do not want to submit comment today, then I would need it by next week.
Yeah, and just to follow, oh, go ahead, Sue Ellen, if you want to follow up just on that.
Just next Tuesday is the 27th. Would that be enough time, Emma?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
What needs to happen, excuse me, Emma, regarding the, did you say it was November 9th? Like, can the proponent be told we have not yet made our decision and have it needed an extension of time to make the decision on the variance, or is that not an option at all?
Well, so to be clear, development variance permits are at the discretion of council. Committees do not decide on permits.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So council has asked for this committee's feedback to help them with their consideration of this application. And their consideration date, as legislated, has been set for November 9th. So that can be deferred, but it would have to go through a certain process, and there needs to be reason, and it needs to be decided by council ultimately if they want to defer it. It's not up to the applicant, and it's not up to this committee, but this committee can definitely recommend to council to defer the decision, and then to decide if they want to do that. But right now it is scheduled for November 9th, and they need to make a decision whether that is to consider the application or defer the application. It needs to be done at November 9th meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Carla?
I was just thinking, maybe if Steph probably already has like quite a few comments compiled, I'm guessing. Do you?
Mm-hmm. I've got a lot of words on the paper.
But maybe we sent those around, and then you know, once everyone has the chance to look at the environmental assessment, see if anyone has anything to add via email, and then vote via email. Because if we start with what we've already talked about, all we need to see is if there's something to add. Anyway, just an idea.
Okay, DG?
Yeah, I kind of had a bit of an aha moment, because I've been thinking about the lack of protection that our shorelines have, you know, for a long time. And I'm just wondering, and maybe we can't do this, but I'm wondering whether there's a way that we could use this point or this situation as an opportunity to highlight that before council, that we need to get moving on this idea. Otherwise, we're going to be dealing with this piecemeal after piecemeal. And so perhaps one of the ideas could be, you know, that perhaps this would move ahead, but if it could be, if we could include in terms of our recommendation, based on this situation, that we feel that there should be, council needs to get started or direct staff to get started on a development permit zone for the shorelines of Bowen Island. I was about to say British Columbia, to the shorelines of Bowen Island, that would be really a good thing to get going on, because this is, I can just see this happening again and again, and it's going to take a while to get that DPA into into bylaws, and we need to get going on this ASAP. So there's just a thought. If we could bundle them, that might make things, might be a good idea.
Are there any more comments at this time, or we proceed with our request to council to review the terms of reference, and then in the meantime, I think the idea of bundling DG's recommendation is a good one, and also Carla's recommendation that we circulate maybe any new points that come up when we review the terms, and then maybe see if there's a need to have a meeting again. I think that could be a good way to move forward. And if we do see that there is, we can call for something for sure next week. But I think we can review and add any missing points beyond the extensive list that Steph has probably consolidated. Does that sound like a good way forward? Yep, great.
No.
Wonderful. All right, Steph, can I move on?
Yes, and I won't have a chance to get these cleaned up until tomorrow or the next day.
Okay, so looking at the
Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Emma.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for all your comments. They're all very, very useful.
And the next item on our agenda as well is coming to you, Emma.
This one hopefully will be quick.
So I believe you have something to present, and then we'll have a discussion about it.
I actually don't have a presentation, just a very quick verbal, I guess, preface. This is really, I think, more of a FYI, I think. This is in regards to wayfinding on our trails, and I believe this is part of the Parks Plan already, has already been highlighted. And this came out of a recently completed school travel plan, which was an initiative of the transportation plan. And the purpose of the school travel plan, completed by consultants in collaboration with all 3 schools on Bowen Island. That's Bowen Island Community School, IPS, Island Pacific School, and our Island Discovery Learning Community. And it is to help develop safer and more convenient routes for students to get to school actively, so outside of a car, mainly walking or cycling. And the plan comes up with, develops a list of actions for both the schools, municipalities, and other external agencies to help advance those goals of safer transportation for students. And one of the actions was to improve our trail wayfinding. And I can say I was involved with all of the engagement. So I can say that this really came out of the engagement with IPS, Island Pacific School. A majority of their students come from off island. They're not familiar with the trails here. And every time they get a new cohort coming off of the ferry, getting to the school, students almost always get lost in that trail system between IPS and the main road, that Belterra area. I don't know if you're all familiar with that trail system there. So a lot of students did say they would be inclined to walk more, or it would just be easier and faster to walk if the wayfinding on the trail system was better. This was also a comment that came out of the engagement for the transportation plan in general. So I think it is worthy of mentioning. Again, I think it's already captured in the Parks Plan, but this is just to show that the school travel plan supports that aspect of the Parks Plan. I don't think there's any recommendation or action involved with this item. It was a referral from the Transportation Advisory Committee upon receipt of the school travel plan, just to let this committee know that that was in the school travel plan.
Great. Thanks, Emma. That's wonderful.
I think that's it for me. Unless there's any questions, I'm going to sign off.
Any questions for Emma before she goes? No? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Really
Have a great night. Thank you.
Bye. All right. Moving on to the next item. This is review of the action items from the previous meeting that we had in March. I think in the interest of time, Steph, we wanted to perhaps review these items at the next meeting or take a look at it now. We did have, since we haven't met in so long due to the pandemic, I have the action items open. Would you like for me to share the screen? Would that be helpful? Okay. Can everyone see that?
No, it's a bit small.
It's small. All right. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we had discussed the invasive species on the island and our hopes to acquire some boot brushes and signage in critical locations. So we had planned to select 3 locations by the time of our next meeting. This was supposed to be back in March. I don't know if anyone had a chance to do that, but we can certainly put this on for the next meeting, just as a refresher. I was in touch with the Play Clean Go campaign for BC, and they have some boot brushes and signage available, just some generic signage that we can use on our trails. And I think we had discussed perhaps doing the Quarry Park and sort of Ferry Fen network. But the committee was supposed to go back and think about this and then come back and make some recommendations as to which 3 sites we could start with implementing this boot brush program. So unless I can see if anyone has any feedback on this point today, otherwise, can I recommend that we go back out to the trails and we come back to the next meeting with some recommendations on this? Sue Ellen?
Yeah, it occurs to me that some parks like Quarry, I don't think I was at this meeting, but some parks like Quarry Park were massively disturbed and have gone through stages of being full of thistles and invasive plants and are now turning into forest. Whereas some other areas of parkland or shoreline might be much more sensitive and have no invasive plants yet. So they might be, anyway, so it seems to me that some of the thinking might not be just trails, but which areas deserve, or maybe that's not the right word, but which areas would most benefit from protection of this kind. Anyway, that's just some thinking. So maybe think about some beaches as well as trails and where the sensitive ecosystems might be. Like some of the crown islets, for example, are, well, no, that boot brushes doesn't make sense. Anyway, but just the idea of which ecosystems. Thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Sue Ellen. Bonnie, did I see your hand up as well? Yes? No? Okay. Any more feedback on this point? I'm just trying to see everybody's faces. I've got to swipe left and right. Okay, no. So I think we should look at all the ecosystems, as Sue Ellen is saying, and hopefully for the next meeting, we can come back to this point and have a more in-depth discussion about the boot brushes and where they could potentially go. The next point from the last meeting, the action was still around the invasive species from Phil. This was, I think you were to discuss with the BITS, with the Bowen Island Trail Society. I don't know, Phil, if you have any update on this point.
Not at this time, no, but I have it on the agenda for our next meeting.
Okay, well, we'll cover that in the next meeting. And let's see, point 5, discuss recommendation regarding Finisterre access next meeting and invite Councillor Fast to provide information regarding a possible exchange with Hood Point Strata. Now this, I believe, was with regards to access to that, like the walk. Remember the Sue Ellen, the walkabout we had taken back in February last year, and there was some land in the Finisterre neighborhood that we saw, some parkland, and I think the community had some ownership that they were willing to trade for access to the beach. I don't know if you have any update on that at this time, or we can postpone.
I think it would be a good idea to postpone. I'd have to look at my notes, and I think, you know, a possible exchange with Hood Point Strata would be a long, deliberative, unexpected idea. But it was an interesting walkabout, and I welcome the chance to look at my notes and speak to it at the next meeting. Some of those issues about where are the rights of way and how do you find them, and I think staff would probably have some input there too, because Carla was there.
Yes.
Bonnie was away. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Next meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you. And the last point was from Terry, who is the lead on the little, I think there's a committee, Little Known Parks and Trails Committee, or the Finding Trails Committee. And I believe you were to send an availability poll, but I think given the pandemic, I'm assuming this was postponed. But Terry, do you have any comment on this at this time?
I guess I just kind of question where you guys think we're at in terms of getting committee members together and going for hikes. How does everybody feel that that's is that okay at this time with the pandemic the way it is, or does anybody have any like, is it okay to get 5 to 10 people together and hike through trails together?
Claudia?
Maybe we need, well, we're outside, so that's one good thing. We can wear masks if we need to stand together. We shouldn't carpool. And then, but maybe we should limit participation to 6 people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I just hadn't really been working on that. So if everybody's like interested in resuming those ideas, I could start thinking about it again. Mm-hmm.
Sue Ellen and then Bonnie.
Just that I was on a walkabout. It was a nature club hike up Mount Gardner on the weekend, and so Melissa Harrison and Ellen Whitehead organized that one. And similar to what Claudia is saying, they had limits and some rules and things like that. But it's starting to happen all over the place.
Okay.
Bonnie?
I think everybody's heard of the great news about the park. The Conservancy has, yeah, so I just hope, I know that, maybe early in the new year, Terry, maybe we can organize a walk to the new park together. That would be really nice. Once it becomes public land, it won't be for a little while. So
in December, I think,
that would be a nice thing to do. And there's also it's not really, well, it's our purview. Metro Vancouver lands are our purview too, but there is the new park down at the point there, Dorman Point as well, the Metro Park.
Great, okay, yeah. Okay, good, thanks.
Okay.
Stay out of my yard.
Was that another committee member? Okay, great. So Terry, you'll keep us informed, I guess, and
yeah,
restrictions, we'll see what we can plan for a smaller group.
Okay.
Okay. So next point from the agenda is business arising from the minutes, 7.1. Bonnie, I believe you wanted to address the committee about the Mount Gardner motorized use prohibition status.
Sure, and I welcome a discussion following my comments. I just wanted to let the committee know I've had some fairly recent communication with Tom Blackbird from Recreational Sites and Trails BC, and he supposed to any time now start a public consultation process. As everybody probably knows, council did vote, pass a resolution to prohibit asking Tom Blackbird and Forest Lands Natural Resource Ops to prohibit motorized use on Mount Gardner polygon. So moving towards a recreational order, that's the direction that we're seeking, that would prohibit motorized use on Mount Gardner. So part of that process is that the province goes and does a communication consultation with the community. So Tom is organizing that. It was supposed to start by now, so I'm going to actually email him early next week if I haven't heard from him by the end of this week, and just ask how I can assist in facilitating the consultation.
And just before Sue Ellen, I just wanted to know if this committee is automatically on that list of stakeholders to be consulted about the motorized access, or that the consultation process looks like.
Right now, who he is going to consult are the folks that voiced their opinion, the 80 letters. We could ask that a representative from this committee be involved with that as well, maybe the chair, definitely consulted. And then there's other members on this committee that are in a different capacity that will be consulted. So yeah, moving forward, if we are to develop, like, the idea is that there'd be a model where decisions on Mount Gardner would be made by a group, a wider reaching stakeholder group. And in that, we would have representation from this committee. Phil Osborne is on this committee and also represents BITS as well. Christine, I don't know, Christine, if you're still on Baihora? No, okay. Many years on Baihora, and well-deserved rest. But yeah, so that's the vision Tom has sort of put out there. So at that point, but as I say, if you wanted to, I could put your name forward, Lou, to Tom as the voice for the Parks and Trails Committee.
That'd be
if you
great.
wish.
Yep. And yes, Sue Ellen, and then DG.
Yeah, I just wanted to partly say to Bonny, I was up on Mount Gardner on Sunday, as I mentioned, and members of the Trail Riders group were up there doing some construction. They had moved some wood up with their trucks to for some building that they were doing. We just had a brief conversation, and I didn't ask any questions. There were children there too, so I didn't want to have any big discussion, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention. Also, during the walk, other members of the nature club group that was walking mentioned that ATV users were beginning to build trails up Mount Collins. And I think maybe with the pandemic, it's changing people's, people are changing behaviors. The pandemic has changed a lot of things. And so the question of other crown lands or other trail building by motorized vehicles on crown lands is something I'm interested in. So if anybody sees anything or takes any photos or has any information about that, I'd like to know. Thank you very much. So please get in touch.
DG?
Thanks. I guess reinforce the idea that that Lou, as the chairman of PTGAC, beyond the part of the consultation with Tom Blackbird, because I note that it was our recommendation to council that helped facilitate this letter going forward. And so I think making a reference to that recommendation and why we came up with that and the representation of this committee is an important point that needs to be highlighted, I guess, in the consultation. Thanks.
Bonnie and then Phil. Oh, are you on mute?
So what I could do is I could track down, maybe Steph, with your help, the minutes from that meeting where PTGAC, this committee came up with a recommendation to council, just for your sake, Lou. So then when you talk to Tom or are involved with the consultation, you'll have the exact dates and all the information. We'll get that for you.
Great, thank you. Phil?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo DG's comment that I think it is very important for this committee to have representation in that discussion, because of the, if the committee hadn't had the initial discussion around the issue, it's possible that there might not even have been it might not even have been taken to council at all. So I think that was an important development in respect to this issue. I think it's also possible that this committee could help provide advice or give advice as to the stakeholder composition, appropriate stakeholder composition for the discussion that needs to take place in the consultation.
And Bonnie, do we have a say in that composition, or is it like a standard process that the provincial level follows when they carry out these consultations?
Well, with my conversation with Tom, he said that he is going to talk with the members of the coalition, or the partners anyway, some members of those groups, and he wants to talk with the people that voiced their concern initially. That was the scope of it during our conversation, but I definitely can send an email to him with any recommendations of who else should be contacted. I believe the letters, I read every letter that came in, and I believe that there's a wide-ranging representation. So I don't know if maybe there are some folks that should be consulted that weren't part of that letter writing, or, yeah, it'd be nice for him to provide a list, but he probably won't do that. I mean, I don't think he'd broadcast that. Maybe if he could provide me with a list or something. And I just don't know the scope of if I should then bring it to the committee. I don't know. How does the committee feel knowing that there was over 80 letters representing a wide cross section, or wide section of our community? Do you believe that there's people that weren't represented there in that letter, the letters that were presented? Do you believe there's other folks that should be consulted?
Christine?
I know I didn't write a letter, although I felt I should, but then I saw that there were so many other letters, so I didn't bother. But I am interested and I would like to be included. It is an issue that is important to me. I guess I was lazy.
Maybe I could suggest to Tom Blackbird that each one of the committee members be consulted, because we, as you say, we're sort of the impetus and have a pretty good grasp on parks and trails and those sort of issues, being that we're on this committee. Does that sound?
Yeah. Sue Ellen?
I think that would be a great idea, because it's this committee who kind of is the advisory committee on the parks plan, which is the thinking about the future, not just now, but the long-term kind of health and well-being of our parks, trails, and beaches and nature spaces. So I think it would be a good idea if they'll go for it. Yeah.
Ben and then DG?
Before that would take place, I would be quite interested in hearing from someone from the Trail Rider Society, maybe as a guest to a committee meeting. I feel like a lot of the information that I've received about what they're proposing to do or what they're doing has been fairly emotional, and I think it would be worth it for us to hear from someone providing their rationale or speak to their points on the issue. I don't know that it will change any of the minds here, but I think it would be worthwhile to hear other perspectives, because this committee seems like it's fairly uniform in its perspective on this position.
Thanks, Ben. Gigi?
Yeah, thanks. There is a public record of the trail riders in terms of their presentation to council, which is available to us. So that's just something, just a point of information. But one of the things, what I was wondering about was, it seems, and maybe this is the impression, just an impression, and maybe Bonny, you can speak to this, that it seems like Tom Blackbird, I guess I don't have a lot of confidence in his consultation. And so is there a requirement that he has to consult with X number of people or X number of groups, or how is it? It seems like he has so much discretionary power, and he could consult or he could not, right? It seems so nebulous as to what he's going to be doing. And so maybe, Bonny, I'd love to have more confidence in his process, I guess is what I'm saying. And is there anything you can say that would provide that confidence for me?
I can circulate the email that the email exchange. I believe I can circulate that to the committee, and that outlines our discussion, Tom's and my discussion, so that I understand what he's going to do. And he agreed to it before I sent that email to council to let council know what the consultation process would be. I did get him to read the email to make sure that it was correct, and he agreed upon it. So I can let you know if you want the confidence, because it is consulting the people that did write the letters to begin with, and that's over 80 people. So whether it be individually, there would be some sort of smaller groups. It's a little bit funny with COVID, so he is a little bit at a loss on how to do it best, but there would be like a town hall, at least one kind of town hall, maybe 2 smaller sessions, maybe some, he can't really do one-on-one for everybody. I don't think he has that time, but definitely bring everybody to the table, and maybe this group could be one of those tables. And yeah, so if that would provide some confidence, I think I could in good faith share that email correspondence with the committee.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Phil, did you have something? No? Okay. Christine? No? Okay. A question I have, those town hall sessions, I think that'd be great if you could have some kind of form or format like that. Do you think he would be open to having a wider public input, people who didn't write a letter, who may have not even known that the issue was being discussed? I say this because I do know, just in terms of the groups that I associate with, many just haven't known that this issue was on the table. And they've been sort of surprised to see motorized vehicles while they're hiking out on the Mount Gardner Trail. So I don't know if it's too late for that, but if the option is just there, whether they attend or not, but the option for a wider public forum to address the issue could be useful. I don't know if that's a possible option. So with that, I think we can move on, and Bonny will get back to us with the email that you shared with Tom, and then I guess the terms of engagement and what they'll look like for us as the committee. Wonderful. Any more? Nope. Okay. The next point on the agenda is the updates. I think we're at number 8 on updates. Or if there are any staff updates on Manny Bay and Headwaters Quarry Park Enhancement Project. I think both Bonnie and Sue Ellen wanted to address this. No?
I'll just, with Mannion Bay, I just wanted everybody to know, if they don't already, that there was eelgrass planting there, 600 shoots, and also some midline floats, or a demo midline float. Yeah, a boat, which is great. So we're going to monitor over time the seafloor, and then if anybody hasn't seen Bob Turner's latest estuary movie video, it's really great. There's a lot of life in Mannion Bay. And Carla, did you want to just give a brief update on the Quarry Park and Headwater Park project?
Sure. So really great news to share is we got a nice big chunk of money from the Maggie Cummings legacy fund through the community foundation. So yeah, thanks to Ellen for putting a good word in for us.
No, it's just that I used to work with Maggie Cumming, and she was a longtime member of this committee, like 15, 20 years ago. And this is like now Maggie is beginning to come back to work with us again through her fund, is how I see it. So I'm just delighted.
So some of the improvements we have talked about as a group before, those include the installation of the pit toilet. We are expanding the parking as the Parks and Trails Committee suggested. Those 2 portions of the project I'm hoping to finish by the end of the year. And then some of the other parts will come a little bit later throughout the next year. They just take a little bit longer. We have some drainage issues to fix. For example, the boot brushes. I didn't want to, bombard, get into the action items. Steph really doesn't like that when you talk about other things in the action items. So I waited patiently to tell you that boot brushes was also included in the improvement project. So we'd love to install those. We have potential to install another bench or a picnic table, perhaps somewhere, if we can find a good spot for it. And interpretive signage was a big part of the improvement project. And that's really where I was hoping to get some help from the Parks and Trails Committee, because I know you guys will be experts in that field. And so I think what we'll do probably is we'll hire a professional design company to design the signs and manufacture them for us, but it's more about the content. So I know that we talked about doing a historical kind of sign, talking about Maggie's story, perhaps, and maybe the history of the park. Lou and I talked a while ago about some play areas in there. So these areas, I guess, are already existing. We just have to tell people that they're there. So that was part of it. We thought maybe we could have one on the walkway in the bog there. We already did the bog restoration, actually. That was another part of it.
Sorry, did you say you already did that?
We did it, yeah. Not extensively. We ended up having one good day to do it before the rains came. And, because whatever, you get busy with other things and then you say, oh my gosh, okay, bird nesting season is over and we have to do this in the driest months of summer. We better get in there. So yeah, we did it mostly just around the walkway. So one thing I wanted to do is maybe go on a walkabout with the Parks and Trails Committee through both of those parks, if you are willing to take the time and just walk around and talk about potential for other things we can do there, because I'm sure that I've left out some stuff. I just made a list of the things I could think of off the top of my head. And I think that there's room in the budget to maybe do other stuff or do things that don't require a lot of budget, right? We have machines in there. We have people in there. We'll have, once the project is underway, it's a lot easier to keep it going, right? So that's something I'd like to organize. And if people can't come or we have a limit, also feel free to just go walk around the parks yourselves and email any ideas that you have. That's my other request.
That's fantastic news. Yes, Bonnie?
Yeah, thanks, Carla. Carla's done so much work, and thanks so much, Sue Ellen, as well, Maggie Cummings and Community Foundation. I just wanted to say that the parking lot expansion, improving access to the park is really vital. I went there twice. I've been there twice in the last 2 weeks, just because I've been going out to visit friends. I thought, oh, I'll pull in there and do a little walk. And I couldn't find a parking spot in the parking lot. So I think it will be valuable to have the expansion.
Yeah.
Especially with COVID. And we've got those trails all there. It makes sense to make it into a year-round spot where people can do the level walking in the headwaters side as well, for people that have mobility issues or trying to do health recovery things.
Mm-hmm. And Carla, the picnic benches and tables, will there be cover as well? Or those details haven't really been sorted through yet?
Those details haven't really been sorted through yet, but it's really, that's part is just going to depend on the space. It's finding a space within the park that we think people will want to go to. We do already have a couple benches. That's one of our only parks with a bunch of benches in it. So seating is, it's good there.
Yeah.
Great to have an area like that. It's just a matter of deciding if we wanted to clear somewhere for that purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I guess the spaces we discussed a couple of months ago, where there are already some play areas. I think there's like a stone area, and further up there's a bit of a gravel park. They're pretty. I mean, there's some wide open spaces there that wouldn't require so much clearing if they could.
Yeah.
I think on the walkabout we could look and see if there's potential there for maybe adding some cover. I know there's a real need in the community to have more spaces for children who aren't at BICS and who don't have access to the BICS playground at the moment. Have more spaces in the parks to gather to do their learning. And so it's just something we can think of, I think, as a committee on how we can also support to facilitate that, not just for the kids, but for, I think, all community members who are desiring to be outside and need to also socialize outside, given the restrictions we're facing. So it's great to hear about this news. Great work.
I think that's a really good point. And I would also agree that I think that mini quarry area or whatever it is, I'm not sure we've been doing the right maintenance on it, because like I said, we don't really know where it is or what it is. So maybe having some sort of a structure over it would help keep the maintenance down for that area, like if it prevents stuff from falling in there, and encourage use as well. So I like that idea.
Thank you. Any more comments here? Nope. Okay, we're getting almost to 8:45 here. The next point on the agenda is the Finding Trails Subcommittee, which we already discussed, Terry, unless you have anything else to update us on at this point. Oh, you're on mute.
What I think I'll do is I'll start maybe gathering people who are interested. So I'll start sort of working on a subcommittee, and then taking recommendations for different areas we can go. Already Bonnie said 2, so love to hear more recommendations. So I'll start doing that for some sort of walkabout, or just get the ball going anyway. So
okay, thank you.
I'll email.
Great, thank you. And Swellen, anything on council update?
Tons, because it's got like 8 months worth of update, and so much has happened. So I won't, but I think, a few things this committee's been involved with and that we've talked about already tonight. But I will just mention, we have a new chief administrative officer now. So the sort of head of the staff team that Bonnie and Carla are part of, and Emma and everybody. So that's Liam Edwards is his name. And he started in June. And and then I think it was June. Anyway, so then we sort of, things slow down a little bit in the summer. Council doesn't meet in August. So we're kind of back into it for just a couple of weeks now. And here we are. So we're beginning to look ahead for the next year in terms of budget with our new CAO. So on Monday, we, as council, met with Liam Edwards and spent a day up at Rivendell, actually, but thinking about the big picture and what needs to be on the to-do list coming up. And there were, continuing with the parks plan and things like that are on the list. I don't have anything specific to report, but just to let you know that COVID or no COVID, the work goes on, and that we're beginning to look at budget. So that's the kind of thing that Bonny makes the submissions about from the parks plan and that kind of thing. I don't know if I've got other things that Carla and Bonny have and others have mentioned, the different park initiatives, and when I think the walkabouts sound like a great idea, because then we can catch up more with each other. And I don't really want to make a huge long report, let alone could I, for 8 months of COVID. Anyway, but I'm just glad to see all the faces and get back into the work.
Thank you, Sue Ellen.
Could I ask Sue Ellen a question?
Yes, DG.
Yeah, so in terms of this committee, my understanding is that is that this committee won't meet unless we have a referral from council. Is that still the case?
So the direction for committees to meet only on council referral actually didn't come from council. It was a COVID response at the staff level, and it's been slowly loosening. Some committees have been meeting on staff referral, especially the water committees, for example. So I think I might be having a conversation with people tomorrow, because you guys have a lot. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, and
green over here,
and having met for so long,
regularly, because this is kind of crazy.
It's really tough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I'd really hate to go for another 6 months or whatever, because this is the new reality.
Yeah, I will get back to you on that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steph. The last point on updates is from BITS. Is there anything from Phil regarding BITS work?
Sure, I'll just try to keep it brief. We were successful in getting a community foundation grant for $5,000, and we also ran hand loggers this year as a virtual event, which turned out to be nice because it was really easy to put the event on there. Not quite as much fun, but just as effective in terms of fundraising. So we made good progress there on the fundraising side. So that's all contributing to our signage plan. And I don't know if I can show this or not, if it's going to show up here or not, but this is kind of a template of, it's really hard to show it on the video here, but if I can hold it still enough and get it.
We did get a glance at it there, Upper Skid Trail, it says.
Yeah, it's basically, these are laser cut aluminum signage that will go onto the signposts. It's been an embarrassingly long time to get that plan together, but it's finally coming together now. It's all volunteer labor. Bob Schultz and other people have put a huge number of hours into designing the signage, and now it's going to templating, and I hope it will go to an order to get the signs cut. Fingers crossed. So that's great, and RSTBC has agreed to let us use our own kind of signage template, which will be unique to Bowen, which I think is kind of special. So that's happening now. We're working to develop our 2021 plan for projects, which is likely going to include priorities for advancing similar development of the kiosks to improve the kiosks at the Crown trailheads, Crownland trailheads. Those will include new and improved maps and some signage. And my hope is we can also get some information on there about invasive species and the effects that hikers and hiking boots and things like that have on invasives to be consistent with what we're doing in the other parks. Also, we're just, kind of patiently waiting for resolution of RSTBC's decision making about the council resolution or recommendation with respect to Mount Gardner trails. We'll see how that goes, and participate as we can in the discussion of the community consultation. We had a trail cleanup day, which I think was a pretty good success recently, and we're excited about hearing about that new CRC park, which I think there's some excitement amongst the BITS members to get involved with volunteer support for that effort. So that's it.
Great, thank you, Phil. Any questions for Phil or comments? Carla?
Hey, just you were mentioning the kiosks, and I'm not sure if your kiosks need replacing, but we may have to replace kiosks for Headwaters and Quarry Park. And it was suggested to us that we collaborate with NERPS, because NERPS is building kiosks with the Community Foundation grant. And they had I think maybe a couple engineers on their team that were designing them, and they have a really great design, and it's just nice to have that consistency throughout the island. And I think the Community Foundation would appreciate it as well. And actually, I think they were pretty cheap too. I think they managed to build them for only $2,000 or something like that. And they're kind of nice too, because they have the board at the back. So when you go to look at it, you're sheltered from the rain.
Right.
Anyway.
That's good to know about, Carla.
For that.
Sorry.
I'll send you the contact information, Phil.
Thanks.
I had one more update as well, if you don't mind. Is that okay? This one's especially for Ben. And speaking of embarrassingly long times to get projects done, the Mount Gardner Connector Trail has made some progress. So we finally got an approval from the province, only to find out that Metro Vancouver was no longer approving it.
Oh no.
So, but since then we've gone on a little walkabout with Metro Vancouver, and they're working with us. So I think they're happy to have the trail built. We just needed to move it a little bit, and we're going to decommission an old bike trail kind of in exchange, and they'll give us a temporary work permit for their land and everything. And there's some stuff to sort out, but it's moving forward.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's a beautiful trail. Like it's great. Like it's such a nice, gentle slope, beautiful forest.
Awesome. Great work.
And the trail's minimal impact to ecosystem.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe we are finally at the end of our items. And for next meeting, Steph, should we wait for you to get back to us with what we're going to do about that? Or should we set a tentative date now?
I thought about doing a date now, and then I thought I heard there was a possibility of there being not a meeting next week to discuss MS referral, but that was going to be up in the air.
So there's, we discussed looking at the document that's sent around and communicating by email any additional points that could be missing from the exhaustive list we came up with today. But how about a meeting for the committee for next month? I mean, we're not meeting monthly. It's
okay.
So I think there was some question about how we're gonna meet or when we're gonna meet again.
Let me maybe talk to Bonny offline on that, and you maybe. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean, does anyone have a preferred time? Is this the best time? Everyone's here.
Bowen here. I see November 17th at 7 p.m. is still on my calendar somehow. And I think it's always been that third Tuesday. And it's a good turnout tonight. Maybe we could put that on the agenda and start to get the committee working, meeting regularly again, and then make any adjustments as needed.
Does everyone like the third Tuesday?
Yes.
Nodding heads.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so it's in your calendars. November 17th is already there. We'll stick with it. Throw a Zoom link in there, and then possibly something next week, depending on how things unfold.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. I think without further ado, the meeting's adjourned. That's 8:53, so not too bad.
That was
Thank
great.
you, Lou.
Great work, Lou.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Nice
Thanks,
to
everyone.
see everybody.
Bye,
Good to
everyone.
see you all.
Bye.
Yep.